Hi, it's Maria, and today we're doing number 42 in the Forgiveness to Love videos, and so of My Life Exposed. And so the subtitles are Creating Pain for Another Merely Creates More Pain for Oneself, right? And then The Shocking Truth of the Crimes, and then Torture for Hire. So it's going to be quite an interesting little video, and it should be pretty short, actually. But before I get into some of the nitty gritty of some of the worst crimes that humanity perpetrates on itself, I wanted to share some of the mind games, that really should make us ashamed of, as part of the collective, that we've allowed to infiltrate our life. And it's shocking, and it's embarrassing, it's shameful, really. And so when you hear that a human being creates pain for another human being, they only create pain for themselves. And yet it's such a simple concept, and yet most of the people on the planet have no clue. They don't understand that at all, and they just think it's bad luck, or it's this or that, or it's their fault, somebody else's fault. They don't realize that they've attracted that to themselves. And so you would think, who would actually go out of their way to hurt another, right? It would have to be someone who's just so lost, right, that they have no clue what they're doing. And so that person would be described as like a lost soul, right? Or someone who's wicked or wretched, right? Or vile or contemptible, despicable, right? Let's see, detestable, pathetic, obviously God-forsaken, morally bankrupt. How about that one? I love that one. Morally bankrupt. A shell of a person, a reprehensible person, a dreg of society, would only harm another person, right? Because good people don't do that. We would never consider or deliberately hurting another person, or I certainly hope not, right? And so why would one ever want to hurt another when energetically, truly, we are all connected? And so when you doing doing something so dirty, would only bring sadness and sorrow to themselves, right? And so it begs the question, why would anyone do that? I just can't even understand it unless they really have some screws loose upstairs. And so people, it's kind of like those people would be the kind of people who would torture puppies and torture kittens and doggies and rabbits and bunnies. And, they're the ones that you hear about. And I can't even imagine this, but I hear that some people actually grab animals, by the tail and swing them around into cement walls. And I think, oh my God, I couldn't even imagine that. It's just so horrible. And so it would be those kind of people, that poison birds and dismember frogs and rip wings off butterflies. I mean, those are the people that go around hurting animals, large and small, and hurting people. And so to them, life is cheap. All life is cheap. And so those are very miserable and very sick individuals, men, women, and children alike, who actually go out of their way to make other men, women, and children miserable, right? And so they're so clueless that they, in fact, invite pain into their own lives. And so obviously they're psychologically disturbed, right? And they're the ones that grow up and they're known as psychopaths, right? Psychopaths, narcissists. I think psychopaths are a little further down the scale than a psychopath, than a narcissist, excuse me. A sociopath, someone who is very, very low vibrational, someone who some might even describe as being demonic, right? Because they're almost so so reprehensible that they're even in a different dimension. And so these are the pathological liars. And so these are the criminals that abuse others. And even though attorneys have for years tried to play the insanity card, it's almost like that, they'll roll the dice like we're in Vegas or something and just hope that something sticks, that someone says, oh yeah, well, they're just crazy. So they just didn't know what they were doing. So put them on house arrest or something. And so, and yet, there's no defense for these kind of people because at the end of the day, they have actually harmed other human beings, other animals, other living creatures. And so, when we put up with abuse, and yet we can look at men, women, and children that we see out in the world, many of us, actually, I have to put myself in that group at all as well. Many of us have allowed ourselves to be abused. And so we, again, we're on planet Earth to learn our lessons and to learn self-love. And so as we empower ourselves, as we become stronger, as we build higher boundaries and stronger boundaries, we don't put up with that anymore, right? Because when we leave ourselves open to abuse, we open ourselves up to disease, to depression, to anguish, and we realize that we've put up with way, way too much, whether it's in an abusive marriage, whether it's an abusive childhood, if our parents were alcoholics or something, whether it's in an abusive employment situation. Some people have really crazy bosses. And so whatever, these people that are the abusers, they view life as a game, really. It's almost like, how far can I push before you will stand up for yourself, before you will say no more? And a lot of times when we do finally feel empowered enough to say no more, then they back off, because it's the bully complex. It's when people behave as bullies. They'll keep pushing, they'll keep pushing, they'll keep pushing until someone says, no, stop it. I'm not going to deal with this anymore. And so that's, we can't really castigate ourselves because life is a series of lessons. And at the end of the day, it's what did we learn and how did we handle ourselves in it? A lot of times these people, and us as well, we find ourselves in classrooms where our adversaries push us to the limit, right? And they find it pleasurable, and they have this insatiable need for power and control. And it's almost like a Hitler or a Stalin or an Idi Amin, right? And so where mass destruction is really the name of the game, and they don't care about anything else. It's almost like the Thanksgiving dinners. You know how people dread Thanksgiving, and here we are, we're almost at that holiday. But they dread it because there's always some family member who comes who just tries to stir the pot, right? And project their own misery on others. And so what is it? No, it's not. You don't put the screw in and turn it. And you put the knife in and turn it. And they just want to create pain and conflict. And yet you realize that these are very wounded people. And yet when our parents are harmed, when our parents are even murdered, our first thought is, oh, come on, that didn't really happen. Not here, not in this day and age, and certainly not in the United States of America, right? And then our next thought is, oh my God, it did happen. But if it did happen, it would be on front page news, right? And so it would be all over the internet and all over, because it's such a great storyline for a Stephen King thriller, right? Or the FBI files. And instead, when there was a wealthy doctor gynecologist and his wife who retired in Florida, and they were basically, it appeared that they were murdered by their daughter, who was a nurse married to an orthopedic surgeon. Um, no one did anything. No one lifted a finger. Can you even imagine watching your parents being murdered in cold blood? Um, Watching them being murdered in cold blood by family? Watching them being murdered in cold blood by family for money? Um, you think, oh, well, some people are just frozen hearted, but yes, and God and money is their God. But you can't even believe that this is happening, and more so, you can't even believe that it was being hushed, that there was a cover up of humongous proportion, right? Because such would be front page news, right? Not just discounted, not someone who would say, oh, you know what, it's too late, or go to the police, and the police say, oh, hire an attorney, and then the attorney says, no, 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 go to the police, and then the police say, oh, no, no, hire an attorney, and then finally you see the police and you say, oh, I'm the one who called you in 2010, 2011, 2012, 2013, 2014, 2015, 2016, 2017, 2018, 2019, 2020, 2021, and here I am in 2022, and no one is still doing anything about it. And it's beyond horrifying, actually. And then you add to it the crimes that have been committed as part of the cover up, right? And so, for people who are aware of what's been going on, they have been slowly being poisoned. And so they've been sprayed or basically saturated with, if the poisoned food didn't do it, that was designed to slowly kill them. If that didn't do it, then they were, sprayed and saturated with an insecticide in order to speed up the killing. And so, and when that didn't work, then they paid creepos to harass and stalk and follow and tamper every bite and every sip, so that you feel like your body is burning in from the inside out. And so it's actually, I can actually draw the analogy, because it's actually that fire that burns within me that is allowing me and propelling me to actually tell the story. Because it is, if I had heard this about someone else, I would be horrified, and I would want to do what I could to help them. And yet it just seems like, those things happen. It's almost like when the neighbor down the street is a pedophile, and you think, oh, well, he's just a guy. He just has a sexual urge, and so, the little girl wanted it, right? And so it's horrifying that people excuse these horrendous and horrific crimes because why? Why is it? Is it that there's so much money out there, that money talks, and people are so easily persuaded to ignore the horrors going on outside? Is it that the consciousness of humanity is so low right now that we excuse this type of behavior? I mean, and people who are put out, as I was, of my own home, and every account was ravaged, where I was on the street and homeless for years. And I just think, oh, if I saw that of a woman, I certainly would think it should be on the news, right? Or I certainly would think that people would do something, right? And yet there are so many political forces in our country that have taken over, that the truth doesn't come out, and we're so manipulated, and it makes us feel just so dirty, actually, I think, because for me, everyone, every attorney, every judge, every governmental agency that I contacted, every doctor, every lawyer, every business person, every friend, relative, neighbor, acquaintance. Yes, every church group, a club, law enforcement, including the police and the sheriff, would question my sanity, right? They'd say, well, this can't be happening, so how can this be? Like you're not telling the truth, or you've omitted some very important details, right? Or maybe you're just so delusional that you've just made it all up. And and yet I don't think the disappearance and the fact that my parents are deceased by untimely, and their deaths were extremely untimely. I don't think that someone can make that up. And whatever excuse, whatever doctor records were altered, those things do happen, unfortunately. People do cover their tracks, and remember the Watergate fiasco, and that was the cover up, that the cover up was really what impeached Richard Nixon, as more so than the crimes themselves. And so you have all these paid flying monkeys who kind of set the scene and set the stage for an altered reality, so that the people who are in the know of it, their reality is discredited, right? It is ignored. It is minimized. It is it's almost like the paid experts in litigation. You hire, one side hires a paid expert, and then the other side hires a paid expert. Well, and of course, they're at odds. Now, why would that be? Because at trial, they are told to testify at trial based on the perspective of he who hired them, right? A paid expert is not going to go on for the other side. A paid expert is going to say whatever the attorney that hired him wants him to say. And that's just how it works, right? And so whether most people know that or not, I mean, it always sounds good. Oh, this is an expert and he's going to testify. But basically, you have to find out who hired him and who is writing the checks. But anyway, in terms of and now it's every day. If I go on Facebook or YouTube or something, it talks about more and more lawsuits. It's were you abused in this nursing home? So it's not just Camp Lejeune, or it's not just Tobermax, or it's not just some of the other Johnson & Johnson, with the talc. It is now you've got all these nursing homes saying if you were abused there, or if you had a car that was doing this and this, now we have all these class action suits. And so it's almost, you think, oh, well, finally the truth will come out. But, now there's all kinds of other things that need to be taken into the equation, right? Because now you have more people involved, and then it just kind of can become a circus. And that's what we really don't need, because what we're trying to do is get to the bottom of it and help clean up the planet, as opposed to creating more of a circus atmosphere, really. But you've got over-the-counter drugs, you've got prescription drugs, you've got street drugs, you've got tampered vehicles, you've got accidents that were set up, right, with even holes being drilled in some of the pipes so that the liquids would escape, and then the car. Well, I don't know anything about cars, really, just what I've read and just what people have told me. But you've got errors in medical procedures and in medical reports and in medical treatment. And the list goes on and on and on. And so you wonder how are all these murders allowed to happen, and who is responsible, and how can we be so negligent that we have allowed this to go on, and now it's time to clean it up. But had we not engaged in this kind of behavior to begin with, there wouldn't be anything to clean up, and we wouldn't have had all these casualties. So here there are consequences, for people and who kill others, right? And whether they understand Newtonian physics and the karmic boomerang, or whether they understand, that in the spiritual realm, the higher vibratory energies don't behave this way, right? It's just not allowed. It's just no one would even consider it. And so, despite our being in the material world, yes, we are here in the physical, but we really are better than that. We're better than the savages that many behave like, where people are pushed to the edge to do like just the craziest things. And so, and then there is a network that tries to ensnare us, and yet they are so untouchable, right? Is it the case where money talks? I mean, we all know that money talks, but sometimes we want to close our eyes because we don't really want to believe that, because it's just too creepy, right? And so, and again, I talked about the cover-up, because we want to believe that justice prevails, and yet when justice doesn't, then we don't want to think that there is injustice. So what we do is we kind of cover it up, and it makes it seem like justice did prevail. But we really are at a loss for a lot of the facts involved. And so, sometimes there just aren't enough employees, I suppose, or enough investigators to really get to the bottom of some of the crimes. Whether it's, I know that when I was reporting the crimes, when I was reporting the murder of my parents, it just seemed like there was no difference whether I would be reporting the theft of Twinkies at a 7-Eleven, or the murder of my parents for several $1 million. I mean, that's just crazy. And this is at a, nationally recognized hospital and an Alzheimer's facility. And it just seemed like there was just such professional sabotage with deep pockets at the bottom of it all. And so, because I'm speaking, I have understood that, in fact, my family has made it very clear that they don't want me talking. And so, other than the physical things that they try to do in order to really harm me, like having the Greyhound bus door slammed on my head. But, it's also the being shadow banned. And I didn't even know what shadow banned was. But it's restricting my audience. So whoever's watching this now, you may be the only ones watching it, because we never know. I can't find sometimes my own videos on Facebook. And so I've put them on my website, mariahady.com. And but who would go there? Because if you don't know of my website, you'll never find anything on it, right? And so and my audience is restricted. I mean, people will say, I clicked on Facebook and I saw your video was there, but then when I went to view it, it was gone. And so, those things happen. And that's happened with Vimeo. They lost a whole bunch of my videos from before. And so I don't understand really how it happens. But, Einstein has told us that the world can be a dangerous place. And it's not because of those people who do the evil. It's actually more so because of the people who see the evil going on and don't do anything about it, because it's much easier to just say, oh, I'm not going to get involved, right? And so sometimes we do have to take a stand, and we do because that's why we're here. We're not here to be like ostriches. Remember ostriches, they bury their head in the sand. And so we're not here to do that. I mean, we are intelligent, we are aware, we have so much social media and so many news sources and so much awareness, and we can read just about anything and see just about anything that we want to see on on the internet. And so we are here to use all of those resources to better ourselves and to better those in our world. And so it's no more slipping things under the rug. It's no more closing our eyes and pretending we don't see it. I mean, that is kind of what this whole movement about, and I think it started with the Why Me, right? And then all of a sudden it was people were coming out saying, well, this happened to me and this happened to me. And then it was the Catholic priests. And so there are so many things that have happened to human beings on this planet that for so long had been suppressed. And at a certain point, it reaches that tipping point where they then say enough is enough, and now people will be talking about it. And so the same goes for the crimes that have been hidden, and the injustices in the legal system, the injustices in the political system, the injustices in the medical system, the injustices in our world, in every facet of our world. Where there's money, people tend to sometimes not exactly and behave with the most integrity, if you know what I mean. And so it's time that we all take responsibility, and we all do what we can in order to be more integrous and to be better human beings, right? To be human beings that we can be proud of ourselves, and to love ourselves, and to love our neighbors and our brothers and sisters. Okay, and so on that note, I'm going to go, and the next one I'm going to list the specific crimes that I've seen. But right now, I don't want to keep this any longer. And so I thank you for listening, and tune in to the next one, which is number 43. Okay, I love you.